Greetings and welcome to the Pampering Myself podcast, an advocacy for self-care. We'll laugh, we'll cry, and most importantly, we'll learn that you can't pour from an empty cup. You'll hear stories, interviews, and conversations which will empower you in living your best life. Greetings, podcast listeners, and Happy New Year's, and welcome to the 2020 Vision Series, Part 4 podcast of Seeing Things from a Different Perspective. Now, the purpose of this series is to prepare us for 2020, and here we are. Whatever our goals, dreams, or purpose is for the new year, we want to be successful, but we know it takes more than just wanting to be successful. Meaning we have some work to do, especially on ourselves. So in parts 1, 2, and 3, I challenged you all to put at least one of the tips into practice, and hopefully you have or will. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to the first 3 parts, I encourage you to do so. Before we get started with the final episode of this series, I'd like to briefly review the 5 tips from part 3. Tip number 11 was to make sure you get plenty of sleep. Now, I know a lot of people, and I have said it myself, say that they can function off of 4 hours a night or 5 hours a night. You may think you can, but internally, things are being done to damage your body, your organs, your things that are happening. And this is all research that can be verified according to the Center for Disease Control. Number 12 is to volunteer more. Research shows that helping others benefits you in so many ways, and it helps you to view things from a different perspective, which is what this series is all about. Number 13 is to laugh more. Now, I know we've all heard that phrase that said laughter is the best medicine, and we have probably said it more than once ourselves. I needed that laugh. That's because it takes your mind off of stressful events or things that are eating you up inside. And speaking of eating you up, number 14 was to eat healthy. What you are, exactly what you eat. Junk in, junk out. And number 15, my favorite, take time to smell the roses because we can't pour from an empty cup. So getting enough sleep and developing better eating habits are my challenges from the last episode. But I'm getting it together, and I hope you are as well. Now for the last final tips. Tip number 16. This is a good one. Avoid negative people when possible. Now, research shows that negativity is not just bad for your mood, it's bad for your health because it takes a toll on your body and your mind, and it induces tension and perpetuates anxiety and stress hormones. I found an interesting article that I read that listed 8 signs that you might be a negative person. And I like to share 3 of them with you. Now, I think we might all be guilty, at least I know I am, from time to time, of being negative. But I try not to be because I know that others do it as a routinely. And when they do it, I say to myself, oh my goodness, they are so negative. But here we go. So the first one I like to share is when someone's first response is negative. Now I want to give you an example. I thought something was wrong when you didn't answer the phone. Now, haven't you heard people say that? I mean, right off the bat, they think the worst of things. Or they give you a compliment and take it back in the same sentence. And here's an example of that. Oh, that's a nice car, but it's too small for me. But it's not your car. I didn't buy it with you in mind. A lot of times that's what you want to say. So if it's something that you don't like that someone else, why take that compliment back? Now, I'm sure you know people like that. And so, why couldn't we respond in a positive way? That's nice. Or I love it. Or well deserved. That way, you leave that person feeling good opposed to leaving them feel defensive as to why they chose what they did. How would you feel if you were excited about something and someone rained on your parade? See how that works? The second one I want to share about you might be a negative person is being focused on the problem and not the solution. Here's another example. I started crafting about 3 years ago. And when I first got my cutting machine, I'm going to tell you, it really gave me the blues. I wanted to throw that thing out the window. So I joined a few Facebook pages for assistance, and believe me, I wasn't the only one. Some people said they had theirs for months and never took it out the box because they didn't know how to use it. Now that's focusing on the problem. To really leave something in the box for months. One person even said a year. The solution would have been to seek help. For me, that was through the many Facebook groups that I joined, the many videos, I mean, hours worth of videos, and the online classes. And in no time, I was working that machine like a pro. But if I had done like so many others and focused on the lack of my knowledge and working it, it would still be in the box. So now when people are on there, I have a spiel. I tell them it's a learning curve. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to waste material. So I give them all of the things that are going to happen up front. But in the end, you will learn it. So don't stress yourself out. Try to avoid all of that. And things will get better over time. The third thing that says you might be a negative person is you have trouble maintaining relationships. Again, here's an example. If you can't get along with anybody, you might want to take an honest look at yourself. Most often, people have difficulty maintaining relationships, have unresolved issues with themselves. Now, the only thing I can suggest here is meditation, prayer, and self evaluation. And if you know people like I do who can't get along with anyone, there's always some problem with them, and it's never them, then they're the people we're talking about. So we're going to move on to tip number 17 for this year, and that is to maintain a positive attitude. Now, with a little practice, this isn't hard to do, regardless of your circumstances. Now, I'm not trying to say it's easy, I'm just saying it's possible. However, I do believe you have to have faith. And I'm sure if you're anything like me, you have so many examples of being challenged, whether it's a life threatening situation or something as simple as learning a task, although nothing is simple when you're in the midst of a storm. Now, using my crafting machine again as an example, like I said, I wanted to throw it out the window. I didn't care how much I paid for it, but I knew it was just a matter of me learning the software. Patience. I kept telling myself, it can't be that difficult. There's too many people using it, too many people enjoying it and being successful. But you see, my faith and self confidence carried me through and allowed me to maintain a positive attitude. Once I realized that it's just all about how I look at it. So we want to make sure that we maintain a positive attitude because a lot of times when our attitude is negative and we get frustrated and feel overwhelmed, and then things don't go right. They continue to fall down. Tip number 18 is to stay inspired and motivated. Now, you can do this by reading or listening to audiobooks or podcasts that touch on topics regarding personal, spiritual growth, self care, whatever it is of interest to you that you want to do to improve in 2020. And here's some things that I currently listen to. Sacred Pampering Principles by Debriana Jackson Grandy. Excellent book on self reflection and how to pamper ourselves. And what I discovered in this book is that a lot of times, first of all, we don't really know the true meaning of pampering, although it is personal to each of us. But it is something that would have been handed down. So if you weren't pampered or saw what pampering looks like, then perhaps you don't know how to pamper yourself. Norman Vincent Peale has an excellent book that was written in 1952, and believe it or not, it is still relevant today. Titled The Power of Positive Thinking. Now, there are some copies available on Amazon. There's also an audio, which is excellent. So, whichever one I chose to listen to the audio after trying to track down the book, unsuccessful, but now I understand there are some. Of course, there are podcasts. Yes, to Pampering Myself, the one you're listening to, but there are thousands of other podcasts on any topic you can imagine that would help motivate or keep you inspired along your journey. And of course, the number one resource is the Bible, particularly the Proverbs, which is known as the Book of Wisdom. So if you want to stay inspired and motivated, I encourage you to tap into those resources. Tip number 19, keep your eyes on the prize because there are so many distractions and we can get caught up in. Here's another example. For me, I've come to the revelation that I intentionally sabotage myself, and that's just fact. If I have a project or something I want to do, somebody asks me to do something else for them that is better or I think it's better, um, I'll switch. I'll put my project on hold, knowing that I need to focus on it. And it's not because it's not important. I just lose sight of the prize. So I have to do better this year. And so for that reason, I am turning down a project um, that is important, but I have to get my projects completed. So my projects are back on the block and they are my priority, and I have to stay focused and keep my eyes on the prize. And the prize is whatever you deem to be a prize. And tip number 20, Vincent Lombardi once said, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get up. Because for sure you're going to get knocked down. I can't tell you how many times I've been knocked down over the span of my lifetime. But one thing I can say, I always get right back up. What's the alternative, right? Let me give you an example. I spent $150, 2.5 days of my time attending this workshop on how to sell Amazon. We all know Amazon's a big thing these days. And one of the ladies I met at the workshop, she dived right in and doing well. And I could see the potential. But after attending this event, I realized I couldn't dedicate that amount of time necessary for me to be successful. Yet I walked away enlightened with valuable information. Now, everything we want or go after isn't always meant for us, but we have to learn to recognize that. It doesn't mean you're defeated. Take what you learn from it and keep it moving. After all, everything is in divine order. And with that said, that concludes our 2020 Vision Series. Those tips were shared by John Gordon. Hopefully, you'll take them to heart and make 2020 your best year ever. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to a year filled with knowledge and power as we continue to pamper ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. And blessings to you all.